My name is Helen Morris. I'm 59 years old, a widow, and I live in a quiet little town in Oregon. My entire life has been a cycle of working, raising kids, and doing everything the right way, hoping that my two children, Rachel and Aaron, would never have to go through the kind of struggle I once knew. I was never rich, but I tried to be good. I saved every extra dollar, sent them to school, helped them grow into decent people. I just wanted them to live a better life than I had. Then came last Tuesday morning, an email, no subject line, just a name, Rachel. I smiled when I saw it, thought maybe it was a sweet little message before her wedding. A line or two of love. We'd just spoken a few weeks ago about the venue, the photographer, the flowers. I'd already wired her $30,000 so she could book the things she'd always dreamed of since college. But when I opened the email, my smile faded. There was no dear mom, no hi mama like usual. Just one word, mom, as if I were a title, a job. Rachel told me that after discussing things with her fiancé Andrew and his family, they'd finalize the guest list. They wanted the wedding to be intimate and private, so they asked me to watch the ceremony via Livestream, not to attend in person. At the end, Rachel added a line, like it was some kind of comfort. You can watch it on Google Meet. It's basically the same thing, LOL. I stared at the screen. My hands didn't shake. Not a single tear fell. But something inside me quietly broke, like the ground beneath my feet had cracked open, and I was still standing, somehow not falling. I replied with just 4 words. Enjoy your special day. No emotion, no guilt, just a quiet step back. And deep down, I knew those 4 words would echo louder than any scream ever could. I wasn't going to fight anymore. I didn't need to beg for space. I wanted silence. I wanted clarity, a voice that didn't need to shout. I closed the laptop, finished the last sip of my cold coffee, got dressed and headed to work, as if it were any other Tuesday morning. But I knew that was the day I stopped believing that my sacrifices ever meant something to my daughter. And maybe that was the day everything quietly began to change. If you've ever given your all to someone, only to be treated like you never existed, share your story in the comments. We're listening, and you deserve to be seen. Don't forget to subscribe for more honest stories from people who were once overlooked, but chose to stand tall with the dignity they still carry in their hearts. That morning, on my way to the office, I drove through the misty streets of Oregon, streets that had quietly witnessed decades of sacrifice. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't need more noise. My mind played a slow-motion reel of old memories. The early years after I lost my husband, sitting in front of an old washing machine, bills spread across the kitchen counter, trying to stretch every paycheck just far enough to cover Rachel and Aaron's school fees. Back then, I used to think, just a little longer, just one more push. If my kids get a better shot at life, then every sacrifice will be worth it. I skipped my own birthdays, turned down vacations, coffee invites, anything that wasn't a necessity. I wore the same worn-out winter coat for 7 straight years, drove an old sputtering car through bitter Oregon winters, and not once did I feel sorry for myself, because I truly believed that was what love looked like. I remembered when Rachel called me in the middle of the night, heartbroken after a breakup. I booked a flight the very next morning, just to sit beside her, make her a cup of tea, and wipe her tears in a New York apartment I'd never even belonged to. I remembered all the times Aaron called to borrow money for house repairs. I never hesitated. I was always the first to show up. No conditions, no keeping score. And yet, with one email, I was reduced to an afterthought. No warm words, no hug, just a live stream link and a casual LOL, as if that should somehow make it okay. It wasn't the wedding that broke me. It was realizing that I had once been the foundation, and now I was seen as a burden, that my only remaining value was financial, and that was the harshest slap in the face for a mother like me. A mother who had always believed that real love meant giving, without expecting anything in return. And in that moment, I knew I couldn't pretend anymore. I didn't say a word to anyone that morning. Not in the office, not over lunch, not in passing small talk. But somewhere deep in my heart, I whispered to myself, "That's enough, Helen. Truly enough." At the law office, where I'd worked for nearly 20 years, everything felt familiar. The clacking of keyboards, the distant ring of phones, the smell of fresh coffee drifting from the break room. I walked in like I always did. But inside, I was no longer yesterday's Helen Morris. Samuel, my boss, passed by my desk, holding a steaming cappuccino from the cafe downstairs. He placed it gently beside my keyboard, just like he always did. "Coffee, same as usual," he said with a soft smile. I nodded, murmured a quiet thank you, and kept my face calm. Maybe he noticed something was different, but he didn't ask. Samuel had always been the kind of man who knew when silence was more respectful than questions. I looked at the cup, wrapped my fingers around its warmth, like I was holding onto something still real, something kind that didn't demand anything in return. In that moment, I felt seen. Not as a mother, not as someone useful, not as a giver. Just seen. My phone buzzed, a string of messages from Rachel. "We need to talk." "Please don't do this, Mom. This isn't how you should act." Each one popped up like a knock at the door, but this time, I didn't answer. I didn't rush to comfort. I didn't reply. I just stared at the screen and let the silence speak for me. That afternoon at 5:02 p.m., I left the office, but I didn't drive home. I took a turn in the opposite direction, toward the bank. The First Federal branch sat quietly on the corner of a street I knew well. Carlos, the branch manager, greeted me with his usual easy smile. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Morris. What can I help you with today?" I set my purse down, sat across from him. My voice was soft, but steady. "I want to cancel a wire transfer." He hesitated. "The one for the wedding venue in Napa?" I nodded. "Yes, that one." Carlos checked his screen. "You're in luck. It hasn't processed yet. Still in pending." He looked up at me. "It's a large amount. $50,000? Are you sure?" I looked him in the eye, didn't blink. "I'm sure." I signed the form. Each pen stroke felt like sealing away a piece of the past, one I no longer needed to carry. I didn't feel afraid. I didn't feel guilty. I just felt right. When I stepped outside, the sky had turned a soft, quiet gray. Spring wind brushed gently against my sleeves. My phone vibrated. 9 missed calls from Rachel. 2 from Aaron. A message flashed across the screen. "Mom, please don't do this." I turned the phone off. That night, I didn't return home as a mother afraid of being resented. I came home as a woman who had once given everything. and now had chosen to keep just a little something for herself. No shouting, no long arguments, just a mother who, after years of being needed, finally chose the quiet that she herself needed. I got home after dark. The house, as always, was quiet. No lights on, no voices, no welcome back, just me, and the hollow stillness of a woman who had spent more than half her life serving people who no longer looked back. I hung up my coat and walked into the kitchen. It still smelled faintly of old wood and all the meals I used to cook for the kids. I reached under the counter and pulled out a bottle of red wine, a 2014 Merlot. I had saved it for last Thanksgiving, when Rachel promised she'd come home. I had planned the menu, ordered the turkey, picked a pale yellow tablecloth because she used to love that color in high school. And then, just 3 days before the holiday, she sent a short message. Mom, I'm sorry. Andrew needs me to stay in New York. I'll come home next year. I didn't get angry, didn't complain. I just froze the turkey, folded the tablecloth, put the wine back on the shelf, saving it for a worthy occasion. Tonight, I realized, there would be no occasion more worthy than today. The day I stopped waiting. I poured a full glass. The deep red shimmered beneath the soft porch light. I sat on the old wooden chair. A breeze moved through my hair, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. Early spring in Oregon. I looked out across the yard, the same lawn where Rachel used to hunt for Easter eggs, where Aaron once fell off his bike and cried until I came running, where I had stood for hours watering flowers, rain or shine. But now it was all just echoes. I sat there, a mother who had run out of spring in her heart. I took a sip. The wine was dry, not nearly as bitter as the thought that crept in next, that I, the woman who gave birth to Rachel, raised her, sheltered her through every storm, was now less important than a woman who had only been in her life for a handful of years, Andrew's mother. I didn't hate her. Truly, I didn't. She was just doing what society had always taught her to do, protect her family's image. But I couldn't help the sting in my chest, because in every meeting, every conversation I was excluded from, her voice came first. Her opinions were heard. Her presence was unquestioned. And me, the bride's actual mother, was a logistical complication to be worked around. I poured another glass. I didn't cry. Not anymore. I had outgrown the age where pain had to be loud. Instead, I just listened to the sound of my own breathing, soft like the wind, but heavy as a lifetime. I remembered the sleepless nights when Rachel had a fever, the mornings I sat outside her preschool classroom, waiting as she cried and clung to my leg, the midnight texts, Mom, I just broke up with him, and how I'd fly across the country the next morning just to hold her hand. I don't regret what I gave. What hurts is knowing that all of it now seems to be a burden in the eyes of the one who once called me her hero. I remembered the things I left behind too, the faux fur coat I didn't buy because it felt too expensive, the Tuscany trip I dreamed of since I was 40, postponed endlessly to save for Rachel's college. The old car I kept for 14 years because it was the last one Dean drove before he passed. I had folded myself into a drawer, neatly, quietly, completely. And when I finally opened it, I didn't find pride. I found exhaustion. I finished my third glass, and for the first time, the emptiness inside me didn't feel scary. It felt almost peaceful. Not because I stopped loving my children, but because I stopped accepting that love must always look like sacrifice, always showing up, always on time, always available, called when needed, forgotten when not. The phone rang from inside the house. Rachel, I was sure. Maybe she had noticed the remaining $50,000 was withdrawn. Maybe she was panicking. Maybe she was furious. I didn't move. I stayed right there on the porch, lifting my glass, smiling softly to myself. If she truly wanted me there, I would have been on the guest list from the start, not reconsidered only when my wallet closed. I looked up at the sky. No moon, no stars, but it was real, clear, and I whispered to myself, Helen, you've done enough. It's time to step back. And in that moment, I no longer wanted to be the one who's always there when needed. I just wanted to be the one I needed. Not a wonderful mom, not a saint, just someone who could finally live without kneeling beneath the weight of obligation. I stood up, walked back inside, turned off the ringer, and before going to bed, I stuck a small note on the bathroom mirror. 3 simple words, short, but strong enough to hold me steady each morning. I am enough. I was rinsing the last wine glass when the doorbell rang. Once, then twice, then 3 times. Not rushed, but persistent. Like whoever was outside knew I was there and wanted to test how long I could ignore them. I dried my hands on a kitchen towel and walked out to the porch. It was fully dark by now. The motion light flicked on, casting a soft glow on the face I'd known since he was wrapped in a hospital blanket. Aaron, my son. His tie hung loose around his neck, shirt sleeves half rolled up, one hand holding his phone, the other still gently tapping on the door. His eyes looked a little worried, a little tired, but mostly angry. Hi, Mom, he said, stepping into the house before I could respond. I gave a small nod and closed the door behind him. Calm, unhurried, not angry. You ignored a dozen calls, Aaron began, voice already rising. I pulled out a chair and sat at the kitchen table, poured myself a glass of water. I know, I said. I saw your name, but I wasn't ready to talk. Aaron blinked, caught off guard for a moment, then quickly settled into his usual tone. Argumentative, judgmental. Rachel's freaking out. Everyone is in chaos. The hotel contract needs to be paid. Did you? Did you not send the money? I didn't answer right away, just took a sip. Then I looked him in the eye. The same eyes I once kissed after every scraped knee, the hands I held when he was learning to walk. I canceled the transfer, I said. Silence for just a beat. Then, as I expected, his frustration spilled across his face. What? Are you serious? You can't do that. You promised. I cut in, gently but firmly. No, I never promised. I said I'd consider it, and I did, carefully. Aaron jumped up, gripping his phone like he might slam it down. This isn't just about Rachel, he snapped. It's the Andrews, the catering, I held up my hand to stop him. My voice was even, steady, calm. Are you mad that I kept the money for myself? Or are you mad that I refuse to keep acting like a bottomless bank account for a wedding I'm not even allowed to attend? Aaron was quiet, but only for a second. Then, just like every time before when they wanted me to back down, he reached for the sharpest blade they knew, guilt. You always make it about you, he said. You act like you're the victim, like all we ever do is ask and ask. If he'd said that 5 years ago, I probably would have cried. But today, I just looked at him, silent, My son, the boy who used to sit beside me for hours after Dean died, who used to ask, "Are you okay, Mom?" every night, was now looking at me like I was the enemy. "I spent my whole life living for you two," I said, without bitterness. Not a penny spared, not a minute kept for myself. This time, I chose not to continue, and that's wrong too. Aaron stomped his foot. "It's her wedding, Mom, Rachel's big day. The time for family to come together, not the time for someone to pull out money when they've been excluded." I said it slowly, so he'd hear every word. I stood up, still holding my glass, walked toward the door, gently. I knew what I was about to say. Something I'd never dared to say in 32 years. "Aaron," I turned to him, "leave my house." His eyes widened. "Mom, what did you say?" I repeated it, quieter this time, but no less certain. "Leave my house. You don't get to come here and tell me how to be a mother. You don't get to scold me for not following your plan, especially when I'm the one you all chose to exclude from your perfect little united family." There was no yelling, no begging, just one woman, standing in the living room where old family photos used to hang, finally reclaiming her voice. Aaron stood there, frozen. Then he turned and walked out. No door slam, just a soft click. But to me, it echoed like an ending. I stood still for a moment, listened to the engine start, heard the car drive off into the night, and then I let out a long breath, not a sigh of triumph, but the kind you release when after years of silence, you finally whisper to yourself, "Enough." That night, I didn't eat dinner. I wasn't hungry. I just sat at the table, opened my notebook, wrote the first words in months of empty pages. Not everyone who walks away is a betrayer. Sometimes we must walk to stop betraying ourselves. I woke up earlier than usual, not because I couldn't sleep, not from worry, but simply because, after a night without guilt or turmoil, my body had finally returned to its natural rhythm. I made coffee, poured water into the kettle, the bubbling sound rising like a soft morning melody. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, casting golden light across the worn wooden countertop. I reached for the cream-colored mug, the one Jenna gave me for my birthday back in 2018, and filled it with just the right amount of strong, dark roast. I hadn't even touched the cup when my phone started to buzz. A long string of vibrations. The screen lit up. Messages from Rachel. At first, they were full of blame. "Mom, why would you do this? Did you even think about how this makes me feel? Everyone's disappointed in you." I didn't reply. Then came the bargaining phase. "Mom, if you just send the rest of the money, we can fix all of this. If you want to attend, I'll talk to Andrew. You can sit at table 4. Table 4. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because I'd never seen things so clearly before. I was being conditioned to be called Mom. In a moment, I had funded with nearly every cent I'd saved in my lifetime. The last message came at 3:24 a.m. "I don't understand. Why are you doing this to me?" I read that line twice, not angry, not hurt, just quiet. Then a sigh, because the truth was, Rachel really didn't understand. She had grown up in a nest I built with my bare hands. Soft, warm, secure. She never had to choose between cough medicine and the power bill. She never had to push down her own loneliness to comfort someone else crying, because I had done all that for her for 32 years. I took a sip of my coffee, bitter but soothing, and I thought, maybe my mistake wasn't loving her too little. Maybe it was loving her in a way that taught her she'd never have to love me back. I looked down at the flurry of messages on my phone. Not one said, "Are you okay, Mom? Are you hurt? Did it break your heart not to be invited to the most important day of my life?" Not one apology, just negotiations, like I was a failing sponsor who hadn't met her end of the deal. I didn't reply, not out of spite, but because, for the first time in my life, I realized silence wasn't a sign of surrender. It was a statement. I am no longer here to be someone's background character. Around 9 a.m., I arrived at the office, just like always. I nodded at the receptionist, adjusted my chair, opened my computer. But inside, I knew the woman sitting behind this desk wasn't yesterday's Helen Morris. I had changed, not into someone else, but back into who I used to be. The version of me I left behind somewhere between wiring money, booking last-minute flights, and waiting by the phone for calls that never came. Mid-morning, a new email popped up in my inbox. Subject line, "Please don't ruin my wedding." I opened it. The first line read, "I know you're upset about the live stream, but what you're doing is too much. I've lost the venue deposit. The florist canceled. The caterer is threatening to walk. Andrew and his family are really disappointed. You're making everything worse." Then came the compromise. "If you still want to come, we can talk, but you need to send the rest of the money by 5 p.m. Paris time." Paris, where her future mother-in-law was planning everything. Her birth mother, only allowed to talk if the money came through. I wasn't surprised. Rachel always believed everything could be fixed with a swipe of a credit card. But what she didn't understand was that some things, once broken, can't be bought back. Like trust, like the feeling of being wanted, like the role of a mother on her daughter's wedding day. I closed the email, didn't respond. Around noon, Mr. Samuel stopped by my desk. "Lunch, Helen? New Italian place open nearby. My treat." I almost declined, like I always did, but then I thought, maybe I needed a new kind of quiet, not to hide, but to sit as a whole person, not just someone's shadow. "Yes," I smiled. "I'd like that." Lunch was simple: creamy pasta and toasted bread. He talked about his grandkids, 3 little whirlwinds running wild through his backyard. His eyes softened when he mentioned them. Like love, for him, was something he never felt ashamed to show. After we finished, he set his fork down, looked at me, and said, "Forgive me if I'm being nosy, but you seem lighter today, not because life got easier, but because it feels like you finally put something heavy down. Am I right?" I didn't hide it. I told him about Rachel, the wedding, the money. The 3 a.m. text, the email demanding more, and why, for the first time in my life, I chose not to respond. He didn't say, "I understand," didn't give advice. He just placed a hand gently over mine and said, "Sometimes, real love isn't about giving endlessly. It's about knowing when to stop." When I got back to my desk, my phone lit up again. More messages, missed calls, a voice memo left unheard. But this time, I didn't flinch. I didn't rush to grab it like an emotional debtor scrambling to repay a loan. I left it there because I knew, for the first time in my life, my silence was speaking louder than any word I could say. That afternoon, I was reviewing contracts in my office when the soft ping of an email broke the silence. a tiny sound. Yet when it comes from your daughter, who just withdrew $50,000 without a single word of explanation, it echoes like a knock against wounds still healing. I glanced at the inbox. Sender, Rachel. Subject, let's talk about the wedding. I opened the email with no expectations, and it delivered just that. Mom, I know you're upset about the live stream, and I'm sorry if you felt left out, but it's not too late. If you can rearrange your finances and send the remaining balance, I think, after discussing with Andrew and his parents, we can consider having you at the ceremony. But you'll need to act fast. The vendors are asking for payments. Time is running out. I read it slowly, word by word. No real apology, no remorse, no acknowledgement of how I was excluded from the start. Not even a, "Are you okay, Mom?" Just a proposal, one that might be reconsidered if I kept funding the show. A transaction, nothing more. I asked myself, is this what a mother-daughter bond has become? Or was I simply looking at a contract with terms, conditions, and deadlines? I used to believe a mother's love was priceless. Now I felt like an item with a receipt, returnable if all invoices were paid. I closed the email, didn't reply. I no longer wanted to attend a wedding where my presence had to be negotiated. I no longer wanted to show up where my worth was measured by my bank account. I wanted to be invited because I was the mother, not considered because I could foot the bill. About half an hour later, Mr. Samuel walked over with a menu in hand. A new Italian place just opened nearby. Want to try it? I was about to say no, like I always did. I'd grown used to eating alone, sitting by the window, chewing quietly through meals like thoughts too heavy to swallow. But today, I looked up into his eyes, patient, without judgment, and I said, yes, I'd like that. The restaurant was tucked into a small alley, soft music drifting from old speakers, light wooden tables, crisp white cloths, low-hanging warm lights. It felt like stepping into someone's cozy kitchen in Italy. We ordered mushroom pasta and garlic bread, a glass of water with a slice of lemon. Nothing fancy, just enough, like the life I once dreamed of, simple but warm. About 15 minutes later, as the food arrived, Samuel asked, "You seem lighter than yesterday. Something change?" I paused, my fork still mid-air, noodles curled. I wasn't sure if I should say anything, but then I thought, maybe I needed to, not for sympathy, but to be heard without being judged. So I told him about Rachel, the wedding, the money, the invitation to watch it all unfold via live stream, and then the offer to possibly attend if I paid up again. About the strangest negotiation of a mother's life. I didn't cry. I just spoke, voice steady, as if I were reciting a contract that had long expired. Samuel didn't interrupt, didn't rush to respond. When I finished, he set down his fork, then said gently, as if not to disturb the fragile calm between us, "Helen, sometimes real love means knowing where to draw the line." I went quiet. I had always believed love meant giving, until there was nothing left. That a good mother never said no. But maybe I was wrong. Because if you love without boundaries, eventually people forget that you're human. You know, Samuel continued, I have a niece. She once told me she's not grateful to her mother because her mom was always there, no matter what she did. I asked, "Why wouldn't you be thankful for that?" She said, "Because I don't think my mom had a choice. She just had to love me." I looked at him, and I understood. Unconditional love can become a shackle when the one receiving it no longer sees it as a gift, but an entitlement. We ate in silence after that, but it was a tender silence, the kind that didn't need to be filled. When the meal ended, Samuel handed me a napkin. Scrawled across it in blue ink were the words, "As long as you place others' worth above your own, you'll always feel like the last option." I folded it carefully, slipped it into my purse, didn't say thank you, because I knew my eyes had said enough. That afternoon, I returned to the office. The phone screen was still lit. Another email from Rachel. I didn't open it, not because I didn't care, but because I finally understood. Not everyone comes into your life to hear you say, "Enough." I reopened my contract draft, rechecked every clause, signed, sent it out. Each click was a quiet reminder. I am still here. I still have worth. I am still making the right choices for me. And for the first time in years, I felt more at peace than ever before. That night, I planned to sleep early. The house had gone quiet since dusk, but inside me still smoldered something. Not pain, just old scratches that hadn't fully healed. I was tidying up the kitchen when I heard a knock. 3 soft, polite taps. Not urgent. I paused. I wasn't expecting anyone. Hadn't made any plans. I walked to the door, and there, standing before me, was a familiar face, Chloe. She looked the same, though more grown now, petite, wide-eyed, on the verge of tears. Rachel's best friend from childhood. She had stayed over at our house countless times. She used to call me Mom Helen, naturally, like I was her second mother. "Chloe?" I asked, a bit surprised. "I'm sorry it's so late," she said quietly, gripping the handles of her tote bag. "I didn't know who else to go to." I stepped aside, opened the door wider. "Come in," I said, without asking anything else. Chloe sat at the kitchen table, her eyes scanning the space that once felt like home. There was something in her gaze, as if she was searching through time, trying to brush off the dust covering old memories. I made tea, not coffee, not wine, just chamomile, the kind I always brewed when I needed peace. "I didn't come to defend Rachel," Chloe began as I set down 2 cups. "And I'm not here to convince you to change your mind." I nodded, waiting. "I just want to ask, if there's something Rachel could say or do, what would that be? Is there anything, if she's truly sincere, that could bring things back to how they were?" I looked at Chloe. Part of me wanted to believe this was Rachel's last effort, however late, to reconnect a broken bond. But another part understood. Rachel didn't come. She sent someone who once saw me as family, but now came like a messenger. I didn't blame Chloe. I knew she meant no harm. But her question, it was too familiar. Like so many times in my life, people didn't ask how much it hurt. They only asked what could be done to make me stop being angry. I took a deep breath. My eyes remained on the cup, the steam rising like memories dissolving into air. "Chloe," I said gently, "if you're asking whether there's something Rachel could say that would make me change my mind," I paused. "Then the answer is nothing." She furrowed her brow. "Nothing at all? Even if Rachel truly apologizes, even when everything's such a mess?" I lifted my cup. took a slow sip, then replied, "An apology made out of desperation is not the same as true remorse. It's a tool to salvage an outcome, not a recognition of the pain someone else endured." Chloe lowered her gaze. She didn't argue. She knew. She had seen me stay up late baking cookies for the girls. She had watched me rush Rachel to the clinic when she had an allergic reaction. She knew. I wasn't a cold mother. She knew. I had once been Rachel's entire sky. "I don't know what to say," Chloe murmured. "She's lost. She doesn't know where to begin. She's afraid you'll stay angry forever, afraid you'll never come back." I smiled softly, but it wasn't the kind of smile that gave in. "Chloe, sometimes silence isn't anger. It's what happens when you've spoken for years and no one listened. Eventually, you just stop speaking." Chloe looked up at me, eyes red. She had always been more intuitive than Rachel. I'd known that for a long time. "She was wrong," she whispered. "I think Rachel truly believed you'd always be there, like the sun, rising every morning without needing to be asked, like a credit card, always available in times of need, like an ATM," I finished. "Insert, press, withdraw, no thank you. No one asks, 'Does the machine ever get tired?'" The room went quiet. Chloe stirred her tea but didn't drink. I placed my hand on hers, soft, like a mother once again comforting a child. "You don't need to apologize for Rachel," I said, "but thank you for coming." She nodded. "I just wanted to know if it's already too late." I didn't answer right away. I got up, walked to the drawer, pulled out a yellow sticky note, wrote a few lines, folded it, handed it to her. She opened it, read aloud. "Love should never be assumed, because when it's unseen, it dies, quietly." Chloe stayed silent for a long time. Then she hugged me, a gentle, unforced embrace. "I'll head home now," she said softly. I walked her to the door. Her figure slowly disappeared down the path beneath the street light. Like a memory fading into night, I closed the door. Didn't cry, didn't ache. I just stood there, in the house I once believed would always be a place my children returned to. And for the first time, I realized some doors aren't closed to shut people out. They're closed to protect yourself from being hurt all over again. Chloe left at exactly 9:17 p.m. I stood by the door for a moment, not because I was expecting someone else to arrive, but because I wanted to feel that moment fully. The sound of the door closing behind her wasn't loud, but to me, it echoed like the final slam of a version of myself I had carried for decades. Not my past exactly, but a specific persona. The woman who was always gentle, always on time, always available. The mother everyone assumed would forgive and return over and over again. The one taken for granted. Tonight, I let her leave, along with Chloe. I walked back inside slowly. No rush. There was no one left I needed to catch up to, no one I owed an explanation. The house was dark, still, but not lonely. There was a kind of silence I hadn't known before, not heavy, but peaceful, as if I had finally made peace with myself. The next morning, I woke up early, not because of an alarm, because my body, no longer weighed down, had found its own rhythm again. I made coffee, opened the window, let the light spill into the kitchen through the old wooden slats. I sat down, pulled out the forgotten little notebook from the drawer. I wrote, "When we stop waiting for others to see us, we begin to light our own way." I closed the notebook and set it down. No need to read it back. A few days later, I got a call from someone on Dean's side of the family. "Word is Rachel canceled the big wedding in Napa," she said. "Just a small backyard ceremony now at Andrew's place. Only a few family members." I smiled, not surprised. No one invited me. And this time, I didn't need to be. I didn't feel left out because I had come to understand that wedding was never meant for me. Not because of an outfit, not because of seating arrangements, but because, in my daughter's eyes, a mother could be rearranged if it made things easier. People often say, a wedding without the mother is a tragedy. But sometimes, absence is the loudest way to reveal what's truly broken. I imagined Rachel in her wedding dress, a dress I never got to see in person. It was probably beautiful. I used to know her taste well. I imagined her smiling beside her groom, and I imagined her future mother-in-law, the one who once suggested cutting the guest list, now quietly scrambling because the budget didn't stretch the way they thought. But all those images, they flickered through my mind like a scene in a film where I no longer had a role. I didn't feel regret. I used to. Regret that I wouldn't be the one lifting her veil, that I wouldn't be there to hug her before she walked down the aisle, that I wouldn't sit in the front row where I once believed I belonged. But then I realized those moments don't define motherhood. Respect does. Acknowledgement does. And if I had been cut from it long before the ceremony, then mourning the event was like grieving a dream someone never intended to share with me. So instead, I chose to spend that day differently. I went to the old bookstore in town, bought a novel I'd passed by a dozen times, but never stopped to read. I picked up a bouquet of lavender and white baby's breath, a gift to myself. I stopped at the bakery and chose a small tart with strawberry jam, the kind I loved in my youth. Then I came home, set the flowers on the table, opened the book, ate my tart, sipped my tea, and missed no one. That afternoon, as the last light poured into the yard, I sat on the garden bench, my fingers brushing petals that had fallen. A sparrow landed on the fence, looked at me, then flew away. I thought, freedom isn't always about leaving a place. Sometimes it's walking away from the space you held in someone's life, when that space only brought you pain, and choosing not to return. That evening, I took a walk down the quiet street near my home. The street lights were soft and golden. The air was cool. I passed a wedding photography studio. In the window was a photo of a glowing bride. I stopped for a moment, looked closely. It wasn't Rachel, but it looked like her. That smile. I had seen it before. When she drove for the first time. When I signed off on her new major. When I wired her the money to move out. I looked at it for a long time, not with anger, but to say goodbye, to the illusion that my love was something she'd always remember. I came home, didn't check my phone. I didn't want to know if they mentioned me. I didn't want to hear, "We wish Mom were here." I didn't want photos sent afterward. All I wanted was this silence, a stillness that didn't demand anything, that didn't feel conditional, that didn't make me beg to belong. Before bed, I typed a few words into my journal. I used to think being present was the most important thing, but now I know being valued is what matters, and I choose to walk away, not because I stopped loving, but because I finally started loving myself. I discovered that email on a Saturday morning. The sky was gray, mist still clung to the kitchen window, and the scent of freshly brewed coffee hung in the air. I wasn't expecting anything. I was simply checking my inbox, a habit formed long ago, like the times I used to check anxiously, wondering, maybe someone needs me. Maybe my daughter is in trouble. Maybe my son has an emergency. But today, I opened my inbox for no one else, just for me, like an ordinary person. Sender, Rachel Morris. Subject, Mom, I need to say this. A small part of me, automatic and quiet, tightened around my coffee cup. Not because I was nervous, just out of habit. My body had learned to brace itself after decades of reacting to others' emotions. I took a deep breath, sipped the coffee, and opened the message. Mom, I know I've made you sad, maybe very sad, but I want you to understand. I didn't mean to. Everything happened so fast. Andrew's family has a lot of rules, so many expectations. I didn't want to disappoint anyone, not even you. I kept reading, line by line. I didn't realize the live stream would hurt you so deeply. I just thought you'd understand, like you always have. I know you've sacrificed so much, and I know I haven't said thank you enough. But being a mom isn't easy, and being a daughter isn't either. Sometimes, I just don't know what the right choice is. A strange mix of apology and justification. Nowhere in the letter did she say, I was wrong, and I'm sorry for the pain I caused you. Instead, it was a long trail of excuses. I didn't mean to. I was under pressure. It was out of my hands. And then the final lines. Whether you come to the wedding or not, you're still my mom. But I hope you understand, I couldn't have done it any differently. I read it all, every word. Then I clicked archive. I didn't reply. I didn't delete it. I didn't print it out. I simply saved it, like someone tucks away an old photograph, not to look at every day, but as a quiet reminder that time existed and that I've moved on. I didn't feel angry. I used to wish I could be angry because anger meant I still cared. But today, I just felt hollow, but not sad, like a house that's still standing after a storm. Not perfect, but not in ruins either. You no longer cry over broken shingles. You just sit on the porch, look at the sky, and accept. I got up and carried my coffee to the porch. The sky was still overcast, but a breeze stirred the air. The lavender I planted in the backyard had begun to bloom, soft, pale purple, careful and resilient, just like me. I sat down in the wooden chair, arms folded, and breathed. And for the first time in decades, I wasn't thinking about anyone else but myself. No more questions like, is Aaron okay today? Did Rachel eat enough? Do they need money urgently? No more waiting for the phone to ring like it was some kind of emotional emergency alert. No more fear that if I disappeared for one day, their entire world would fall apart. Because the truth is, I've already stepped away and their world kept turning. They still live, still marry, still fight. The only difference is I'm no longer in it, and that no longer hurts me. I look down at my hands, thin fingers, wrinkled, marked by time. But these are the hands that once carried children, cooked hundreds of meals, signed dozens of checks, and held firm through the coldest seasons of life. These hands, I whispered to myself, have done enough, and now they deserve to rest, not in surrender, but in freedom. I went back inside, opened the drawer, and took out a blank sheet of paper. I wrote, Love is not endurance. A mother is not a 24/7 service, and daughters, no matter how grown, still need to learn how to love someone who once loved them unconditionally. I didn't send the letter. I folded it, put it in a wooden box, locked it, because I knew if Rachel truly wants to understand, she'll find a way. And if not, then no reply, no explanation would break the cycle of invisibility. That afternoon, I went to the pottery class I signed up for last week. For the first time in my life, I did something just for me. Not to set an example for my children, not so my daughter could say, "See, mom's doing okay," just because I wanted to, because Helen Morris, aside from being a mother, is also a person with preferences, with feelings, with the right to choose. In class, there was a woman named Carol, about my age. We sat next to each other, shaping clay, laughing at our misshapen mugs. She asked, "Are your kids grown?" I smiled. "Very," I said, "so grown that even their mother has to learn how to walk away." Carol didn't pry. She just nodded, as if she understood. And for the first time, I felt like someone truly heard the words I wasn't saying out loud. That night, I went to bed early. No dreams, no tossing, no jumping at phone notifications. Just sleep, whole, warm, peaceful, and a quiet truth I'd never fully realized in nearly 60 years of being a daughter, a wife, and a mother. I don't have to be constantly needed to be truly loved. I just need to be myself, and that is enough. I don't remember exactly when this new chapter began. Maybe it was that morning when I didn't spring out of bed, worrying someone might need me, or that afternoon when I walked out of pottery class with clay-streaked hands and a heart lighter than it had felt in years. Or maybe it began the very moment I sat in my kitchen holding a small notebook and quietly wrote down a simple vow. If my presence can be negotiated, then so can my love and effort. I used to believe that a good mother is someone who is always available, always ready, willing to endure, to be patient, and if necessary, burn herself to keep others warm. But now I understand. That's not love. That's self-erasure. I started with the smallest things. Each morning, I gave myself exactly 30 minutes to read a book without interruptions. No checking my phone, no glancing at emails, just me and the pages, like two old friends finally reunited after years of being separated by duty. I signed up for pottery classes on Tuesday and Friday nights. At first, my hands trembled, the clay was slippery, and my ideas clumsy. My first bowl was misshapen, like a sleepy teacup, but I kept it, placed it right on my kitchen shelf to remind myself even the imperfect is still worth keeping. I started having dinners with friends, not rushed meals between answering texts from my kids or quietly picking up the check to avoid seeming stingy. Real dinners, where I brought only myself. No roles, no expectations. My friend Linda lost her husband last year. We talked about women who don't appear in their children's wedding albums, about how our worth was measured by how much we could endure, about the kind of silence that makes you feel like the world only exists when you serve it. We toasted to women like that and made a promise to never become them again. I also learned to say no, which sounds simple, but for me, it was revolutionary. When Aaron messaged asking if I could help out for a few months because his girlfriend wanted a new apartment, I replied, "I understand, son, but this time I can't." I'm learning how to let my money serve my own life, not to patch up someone else's plans. There was no argument, no accusations, just silence on the other end. And I knew I had just done something I had never done before. I kept a part of myself for myself. I wrote down simple rules and stuck them on my fridge. Never explain a decision in more than 3 sentences. Don't go where I'm not valued. Don't pay for things that don't invite my presence. Don't feel guilty for choosing myself. I read them each morning, not as prayers to any god, but as reminders that I too deserve a place in my own life. One afternoon, I sat in the park near my house on a familiar bench, surrounded by the laughter of children, barking dogs, and the soft hum of bicycle wheels on pavement. I didn't read. I didn't do anything. I just sat. And for the first time in years, I felt enough. I wasn't missing anyone. I wasn't waiting for a text. I wasn't hoping for an overdue apology. I didn't think about Rachel or Aaron or the dinners I skipped to work overtime for tuition or the sleepless nights wondering if my daughter was heartbroken in a distant city or the email with no apology or the wedding invite that was still being considered. I only thought, today is beautiful, and I'm alive, not for anyone else, not out of obligation, just for me. I replanted my backyard, tore down the old fence, lined the path with flowers I once loved but had forgotten the names of. I spent hours outside, hands in dirt, sweat on my neck, but light in my heart. I wasn't planting for anyone else, not hoping someone would notice, not waiting for praise on social media. I just wanted to walk out each morning and see that I still had enough love for life to plant something new. A neighbor once asked me, "Helen, aren't you sad? The kids don't visit, don't call, don't need." I smiled, not bitterly, just the kind of smile that has weathered every season of waiting. "I'm not sad," I said. "They've grown enough to live their own lives, and so have I." That night, I wrote in my journal, "You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. If they never learned how to build their own flame, don't let them take your light for granted." I closed the book, put down my pen, turned off the light. I didn't need anyone to validate me. I knew I, Helen Morris, had come home to myself, and that was enough. Somewhere in this life, maybe you've been like me, believing that love means giving until there's nothing left, thinking you're only worthy as long as you're useful, strong, enduring, assuming you're the backdrop, the foundation, the one who quietly steps aside so others can shine. And then one day, when there's nothing left to give, they leave. No thank you, no turning back. Just you with all the years you gave away, wondering, so what was I in their lives? I'm not sharing this to blame, not to complain. I just want to say to you, the mothers, fathers, wives, husbands, all those who lived quietly for others, that it's time to come back to yourself. You don't have to burn yourself to keep anyone warm anymore. You don't need to show up everywhere just to prove you matter. You don't need love that's exchanged for duty. You deserve to be seen, to be cherished, to be loved, simply for being you. If this story speaks to you, if you've lived something similar, leave a comment below. Share your story, even just a line, a moment, a truth. Because sometimes knowing you're not alone is already the first step to healing. And if you want to keep walking with stories like this, of those who stood quietly in the background, of wounds no one saw, and of how we slowly reclaim ourselves. Subscribe to the channel. We'll keep writing these chapters of recovery. No theatrics, no sugarcoating, just the honest truths of those who were once overlooked, but chose to rise anyway with the dignity still left in their hearts. Thank you for listening, and thank you for still choosing to stay with yourself.